I invite you to listen to the story of the day an intern spilled coffee on me and loudly announced that her husband was the CEO of this hospital. I calmly picked up my phone and said, "You should come down here and see this. Your new wife is throwing coffee on me." The massive Boeing 787 touched down hard on the runway at JFK International Airport. After more than 12 hours of nonstop flight from Frankfurt, the roar of the engines faded, leaving a calm stillness in the business class cabin. I closed the book I had been reading, smoothed the creases in my trousers, and retrieved my carry-on from the overhead compartment as I stepped onto the jet bridge. The humid, crowded air of a New York summer hit my face, carrying the city's familiar gritty scent, a smell that, for anyone who's been away, feels strangely like coming home. My name is Katherine Hayes. I am 32 years old, and to the outside world, I am the woman who has everything. I am the sole heiress of the late chairman of Apex Medical Group, holding a 60% controlling stake and the final decision-making power in one of the largest private hospital systems in the United States. What the world doesn't see is the crushing weight behind that glittering title. Since my father's sudden death from a severe illness, I have carried the burden of his enormous legacy on my shoulders. I've had to maneuver through boardrooms filled with shrewd, old-money shareholders while trying to preserve the illusion of a happy family life. This business trip to Germany had lasted exactly 1 month. I personally visited factory after factory, negotiating the acquisition of a fleet of state-of-the-art medical equipment for our flagship hospital. This responsibility should have belonged to my husband, Mark Thompson, the man currently sitting in the CEO's chair. But I knew his limitations all too well. Mark was handsome, charismatic, and exceptional at networking and winning people over. When it came to technical details or hard negotiations in English, let alone German, was completely out of his depth. Out of love for my husband, and to strengthen his position in front of a demanding board of directors, I agreed to stay behind the scenes. My official title was Chief Strategy Officer, but in reality, I was the one clearing obstacles, managing every critical detail so he could stand in the spotlight. A sleek black town car waited for me at the VIP arrivals terminal. It glided effortlessly across the Whitestone Bridge toward the heart of Manhattan. I wasn't ready to go home yet. I wanted to report the results of my trip to the board, and more importantly, I wanted to see with my own eyes how my husband had been running the hospital during my month-long absence. Apex University Hospital rose majestically from its prime location on the Upper East Side. The 20-story modern marvel of blue-tinted glass reflected the brilliant afternoon sun, the culmination of my father's life's work. As I looked at the polished sign bearing its stylized cross logo, a surge of pride rose in me, mingled with a faint, inexplicable unease. I instructed the driver to drop me at the main entrance, choosing to pull my own suitcase through the lobby rather than use the private executive entrance. I wanted to experience the hospital as an ordinary visitor, to hear its real sounds, not the polished versions presented in glossy boardroom reports. The main lobby was alive with motion. The automated chime of the PA system called out patient numbers while families murmured anxiously to one another. The brisk footsteps of doctors and nurses blended into the chaotic rhythm unique to a busy hospital. A faint, sterile scent of antiseptic lingered in the cool, climate-controlled air. I paused near the reception desk, adjusting the lapels of my white pantsuit, planning to observe for a moment before heading up to Mark's office on the 5th floor to surprise him. Then my attention locked onto a scene unfolding at the intersection of the main corridors. A tall man in white scrubs knelt on the cold marble floor. It was Dr. David Chen, head of cardiology, my former medical school friend, and the hospital's most indispensable clinical asset. He was performing CPR on a middle-aged man who had collapsed from a hypoglycemic attack. Sweat beaded on David's broad forehead, tracing a path down his strong nose before dripping onto the floor. His movements were swift and precise, yet guided by calm, focused compassion. "Give him some space. Let the man breathe," David's deep, commanding voice echoed through the lobby. "Nurse, I need a glucose meter and a glass of warm sugar water now." I watched in silence. David hadn't changed in 15 years. He was the same man who had quietly looked out for me in our youth, a brilliant physician who never chased fame or fortune. When my father died, it was David who stood vigil by the casket for 3 days and nights, ensuring everything was handled with care, while Mark was busy entertaining foreign dignitaries. Watching the way David supported the patient's head, his concentration so absolute that the world around him ceased to exist, filled me with deep admiration. That was the image of a true healer, a soul shining brightly in a world so often clouded by money and ambition. Then the moment shattered. Just a few yards away, near the endlessly rotating revolving doors, a very young woman stood with her hands on her hips, her shrill voice slicing through the solemn atmosphere of the hospital. "Hey! What is wrong with you?" she snapped. "I told you to park my Mercedes in the shade. Why is my car sitting out there in the sun?" she shrieked. "Do you have any idea how hot black leather seats get? You're going to ruin my designer purse." She couldn't have been more than 22. Her face was layered with heavy makeup, her lips painted a harsh, glaring red. She wore a hot pink bodycon dress so short and tight it was blatantly inappropriate for a medical setting, exposing far more skin than was tasteful. Pinned to her chest was a blue intern badge that read, "Tiffany Henry." The elderly Valletta Vietnam veteran who had worked here since my father's time, his hair now white as snow, stood with his head bowed, visibly flustered by the condescension of a girl young enough to be his granddaughter. "I'm so sorry, miss," Henry stammered. "It's been very busy with cars coming and going. I haven't had a chance yet, but I'll move it right away." Tiffany didn't bother to listen. She stomped her foot against the marble floor. "Well, hurry it up. You move like a turtle. How does someone like you even get a job at a 5-star hospital like this? You've completely ruined my morning." Having finished her tirade, Tiffany immediately pulled the latest iPhone from her designer handbag. In an instant, her entire demeanor transformed. The scowl vanished, replaced by a bright, sickeningly sweet smile as she switched to the front-facing camera and began chattering into the screen. "Hi, everyone. Good morning to all my amazing followers. Your girl Tiff had a little drama with some incompetent staff this morning, but whatever. For the sake of public health, I've got to stay positive and cute. Show me some love, guys, tap that heart and share my live stream." I glanced at my watch. It was 9:15 a.m. An employee more than an hour late for her shift, dressed in blatant violation of the code of conduct, was standing in the main lobby berating an elderly colleague and live streaming her personal drama during work hours. Blood rushed to my face, a vein pulsing at my temple. Was this the professional standard Mark had sworn to uphold? Was this the culture my father and I had worked so relentlessly to build? The contrast was unbearable. David knelt on the floor nearby, his shirt soaked with sweat as he fought to save a man's life, while this shallow intern staged a performance for social media. I could no longer remain a silent observer. Clenching the handle of my suitcase, I took a slow, steadying breath, reclaiming the composure expected of a leader. Then I stepped forward with purpose. I walked over to Henry and gently placed a hand on his shoulder in reassurance. He flinched, then looked up, his weathered eyes widening in recognition. He was about to address me as chairwoman, but I quickly raised a finger to my lips, signaling for him to remain silent. I didn't want my identity revealed just yet. I wanted to see how this small drama would unfold. I turned toward the girl. Tiffany Ho was still pouting and posing for her phone. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm but firm, carrying quiet authority. "This is a hospital. A place of healing. Not a fashion show or a marketplace for you to shout at your elders. The workday begins at 8 o'clock. It is now 9. You are late, and you are causing a public disturbance." Pulled out of her narcissistic trance of virtual hearts and flattering comments, Tiffany looked visibly irritated. She lowered her phone and scanned me from head to toe with open disdain, her eyes lingering in judgment. I was wearing a simple, elegant white pantsuit with minimal jewelry. After a 12-hour flight, my face was tired and pale, almost bare of makeup. To someone like her, I was probably just a frumpy patient's relative or an uptight, middle-aged nobody. "And who are you to stick your nose in my business?" Tiffany sneered, contempt dripping from every word. "I'm reprimanding my employee. If you've got nothing better to do, go find a seat somewhere else and stop bothering me. I'm trying to engage with my fans." With that, she raised her phone again, crudely shoving the camera toward my face. Her voice turned shrill and mocking. Look at this, everyone. My day is already ruined by some bitter old hag. Probably got dumped by her husband. Her life's a mess, so she comes here to start trouble. Poor little Tiffany, getting bullied even at work. Her insolence was beyond anything I could have imagined. My original plan had been simple: issue a quiet reprimand, then let HR deal with her once I reached my office. But this level of disrespect could not be ignored. Put the phone down. Now, I said, my voice low and dangerous, my eyes locked on hers. I am asking you to respect hospital regulations and the dignity of others. If you continue filming without consent and insulting people, I will have security escort you out and file a formal complaint.
Oh,
are you threatening me? Tiffany's eyes widened as her heavily made-up face twisted into a sneer. Then she did something I never could have anticipated. Holding a large, half-finished iced coffee, she pretended to turn awkwardly. In reality, she deliberately slammed into me. The entire cup of cold, dark liquid poured over my pristine white pantsuit. Coffee soaked through the fabric and splattered onto the floor, pooling in a dark puddle at my feet. The sticky chill made me shudder as the sharp smell of coffee filled the air. That suit had been a gift from my father on his last birthday. Now it was ruined by a petty, calculated act. Before I could even react, Tiffany let out a theatrical wail. Her fake sobs echoed through the lobby, drowning out the PA system and drawing every eye in the room. "Oh my God. What did you do?" she cried. "Can't you watch where you're going? You pushed me. You ruined my beautiful dress." She wailed hysterically, all while sneaking glances at her live stream, her performance worthy of an Oscar. Crocodile tears streaked down her cheeks. "Everyone, you're all witnesses," she shouted. "This woman, some crazy patient's relative, just assaulted a healthcare worker. That's me. My baby bought me this dress. It's custom made. It cost, like, $2,000. And now it's ruined. How am I ever going to get this stain out?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. People who hadn't seen what really happened looked at me with a mix of disapproval and pity. A few even pulled out their phones, eager to record the spectacle. Sensing she had the audience, Tiffany pressed her advantage. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You'd better apologize right now and pay for this dress," she hissed. "Do you have any idea who my husband is? My husband is Mark Thompson, the CEO of this entire hospital. He can hire or fire anyone here. Mess with me, and you and your whole family will be blacklisted. No doctor in this city will ever treat you again." Hearing Mark's name come from the mouth of this brazen, vulgar girl felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My husband. CEO Mark Thompson. The man I had trusted completely. The man whose career I had sacrificed my own to protect. Since when did he have a young, arrogant mistress flaunting her power in the middle of this sacred place? I looked down at the coffee stain spreading across my suit, then back at Tiffany's triumphant expression. Instead of exploding in rage, an unexpected urge to laugh rose inside me, a bitter, hollow laugh. Calmly, I took a handkerchief from my purse and wiped the sticky liquid from my hand. Then I lifted my head, my gaze sharp as a scalpel. "You said your husband is CEO Mark Thompson." "That's right," Tiffany smirked. "Scared now, aren't you? Get on your knees and polish my shoes, and maybe I'll ask him to forgive your little outburst." Before I could respond, a tall figure stepped between us, forming a solid barrier. The broad, familiar back belonged to David. He had just finished stabilizing the emergency patient, and the faint scent of antiseptic still clung to his scrubs. He stood there like a mountain of quiet authority. He didn't need to raise his voice. The calm presence of a seasoned physician and department head was enough to silence the crowd. Even the onlookers slowly lowered their phones. David glanced at the coffee stain on my white suit, a flash of pain and restrained anger passing through his eyes. Then he turned to Tiffany, his gaze turning icy sharp enough to make her flinch. "Miss Jones," David said, his voice low and controlled, each word deliberate and unmistakably clear. "Why are you causing a disturbance in the main lobby? David asked. At the sight of him, Tiffany looked momentarily unsettled, but she quickly recovered her arrogance, clinging to her supposed connection to the CEO. After all, David was only a department head and employee. Her man was the one in charge. Dr. Chin, you saw what happened, she snapped. This woman pushed me and spilled coffee all over the designer dress Mark gave me. I'm live streaming to expose these rude, violent people to the public so everyone can see what kind of trash comes into this hospital. David didn't even glance at her phone. Instead, he calmly pointed to the large plaque of hospital regulations mounted on the wall. Please read it aloud, he said evenly. Rule number 1, respect all patients and their families. Rule number 3, attire must be professional and comply with the hospital dress code. Rule number 5, personal business and activities that cause a disturbance are prohibited during work hours. He paused and looked her up and down. Now tell me, how many of those rules have you broken? Tiffany froze, her face flushing crimson. She stammered before snapping back, I'm a special case. Mark said I could wear whatever I want to be creative. You're just a hired doctor. What right do you have to lecture me? I'm going to tell Mark to fire you right now. Standing behind David, I heard every word and felt the bitter irony cut deep. So this was how Mark had been indulging his mistress behind my back, letting her run wild as if she owned the place. A mere intern dared to call the head of cardiology a hired doctor and wield the CEO's name as a shield for her appalling behavior. David let out a short, humorless laugh, an expression rarely seen on his usually composed face. A hired doctor, he said quietly. You're right. I was hired for my skills, my integrity, and my knowledge to save lives. His gaze hardened. And you? What exactly are you doing here? You are cheapening the sacred profession of medicine, he continued, his voice steady but cutting, and tarnishing this hospital's reputation for the sake of a few virtual likes and empty compliments. He stepped closer, his imposing presence forcing Tiffany to retreat instinctively. You claim to be CEO Mark Thompson's fiancé, David said coolly. Let me tell you something. A woman with even a shred of self-respect and class would never stand in a public place boasting about such a sordid affair. And she certainly would never speak so rudely to an elder like Henry. David's words pierced straight through Tiffany's fragile ego. Her face burned with shame and fury as the mood of the crowd shifted. The whispers now targeted her. The doctor's right. She has no class at all. Look at how she's dressed, total gold digger. That poor woman in the white suit didn't do anything. You can tell she's a decent person. Isolated and exposed, Tiffany reached for her final weapon, playing the victim. She shrieked into her phone, tears streaming down her face. Everyone, they're ganging up on me. The doctors here protect each other and bully the weak. I'm all alone. Mark, baby, where are you? Come save your wife. They're going to kill me. David turned back to me, his expression softening, his eyes filled with years of unspoken concern. Katherine, he asked quietly, are you really all right? Did the coffee burn you? I shook my head and managed a small smile to reassure him, even though a storm was raging inside me. I'm fine, David. Thank you for standing up for me. He was about to say something else, probably to call security, but I gently placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Don't dirty your hands, I whispered. This is a family matter. Let me handle it. I want to see exactly who my model husband chooses to defend. I looked straight at Tiffany, who was still screaming Mark's name. Fine. You want to call Mark? I'll help you. Let's see how this little performance ends. Calmly, I took my phone from my purse. The screen read 10:15 a.m. According to the detailed schedule my executive assistant had sent me, Mark was in a critically important meeting with a delegation from the Department of Health and key investors from Singapore in the VIP conference room on the 5th floor. He was obsessed with his public image, always eager to appear as a principled, visionary leader. I scrolled through my contacts to my love. A name that once filled me with warmth now made my stomach twist. I pressed the call button. It rang longer than usual. He was probably in the middle of one of his grand speeches about medical ethics and strategic vision ideas he had borrowed from me and from my father. Finally, he answered. Mark's voice came through as a hurried whisper, layered with his usual counterfeit tenderness. Honey, it's me. I'm in a huge meeting with the department and our partners. It's intense. Did you land okay? Why didn't you tell me? I would have picked you up. I ignored his empty questions. Without a word, I switched the call to speakerphone and turned the volume to maximum. The lobby fell silent as everyone strained to listen, including Tiffany, whose wailing abruptly stopped. You're in a meeting? I asked, my voice cold and sharp as winter air. A very important one, he replied. Honey, I can't step away. Why don't you go home and rest? Take a bath. Get some sleep. I'll be home early tonight and make it up to you. I promise. I cut him off. You don't need to come home, I said. You need to come down to the main lobby. Right now. What? He said, startled. The lobby? For what? Honey, I told you I am extremely busy. I said get down here immediately. I shouted, my carefully held composure finally shattering. All the anger and betrayal I had been suppressing exploded at once. Come down here and see your new wife throwing coffee on me. See her insulting Dr. Chan and threatening to have me thrown out of the hospital my father built. The line went dead silent. It was a chilling, suffocating silence. I could picture the color draining from Mark's face. He must have been so rattled that he accidentally hit the speakerphone boutonniere. Perhaps the VIP conference room had fallen so quiet that my furious voice was now echoing in front of every official and investor present. A chair scraped loudly across the floor, followed by Mark's stammering, disjointed voice. See, Katherine, what are you talking about? You're at the hospital? What new wife? Calm down. At the same time, Tiffany, standing across from me, began to turn pale. She recognized the voice instantly. It was him. The man who whispered sweet lies to her every night. But why was this powerful man speaking to this frumpy woman with such fear? Why did he call her honey? You have 5 minutes, I said coldly, each word landing like a sentence of execution. If you are not in this lobby in 5 minutes, I will have my lawyer, Mr. Vance, bring all the necessary paperwork directly to your conference room to discuss this matter with you and your partners. I hung up before he could respond. The hospital lobby fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the low hum of the air conditioning. Every eye was on meth woman in the coffee-stained suit who now radiated unassailable authority, the unmistakable presence of the person truly in charge. David stood beside me with his arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction and unwavering trust on his face. He knew the real drama was only beginning. Tiffany was trembling, her phone nearly slipping from her grasp. She stared at me in disbelief, her red lips quivering. Who are you? I looked at her and smiled a smile, both gentle and terrifyingly cold. Why did you stop your live stream? I said softly. Keep it going. Let everyone watch how your husband deals with his legal wife. Those 5 minutes were the longest of Mark Thompson's life and the final moments of Tiffany's power-hungry illusion. I stood tall, my back straight, waiting for the storm I was about to unleash on the betrayers. The air in the lobby grew thick, heavy enough to cut with a knife. Patients, nurses, and staff instinctively stepped back, forming a wide circle in the center of the floor like a miniature coliseum. At its center stood David, Tiffany, and me. Tiffany still hadn't recovered from the call. She had lowered her phone, no longer daring to aim it at me, though her thumb secretly hovered over the record button. Somewhere in her shallow, calculating mind, a sliver of hope remained. She convinced herself I was merely a powerful business associate of Mark's, or at worst, the dull stay-at-home wife he always complained about. She still believed in her youth, her beauty, and the lies he whispered to her in the dark. Don't you dare try to scare me, Tiffany stammered, forcing herself to stand taller, though her voice trembled. Mark loves me, Tiffany sneered. He told me that even if you're his wife, it's just a title. Every man gets tired of his old wife and wants something new and exciting, and I'm very exciting. I didn't respond to her cheap provocation. Instead, I took out my phone and sent a brief message to Arthur Vance, my most trusted legal counsel. Arthur, bring file A to the main lobby. Immediately. It's time. His reply came instantly. Understood, Madam Chairwoman. I'm in the elevator. David stepped closer, his solid presence shielding me from the curious stares and raised phones of the crowd. Are you sure you want to do this here, Katherine? He whispered. It could damage the hospital's reputation. I looked up at him, my gaze steady and unyielding. A tumor has to be cut out at the root, David. It hurts once, but then it heals. If I try to preserve some false sense of decorum, the hospital my father poured his heart into will be destroyed by them. Reputation is built on integrity and transparency, not lies and cover-ups. David nodded, complete agreement in his eyes. I understand. I'm with you, no matter what happens. His simple words were a small flame warming my frozen heart. For 15 years, he had always been there, quiet, steadfast, unwavering. Meanwhile, on Tiffany's live stream, the comments were flooding in, and the tide had completely turned. Oh my God, who is that woman? She sounds like the boss. Looks like the real wife just showed up. This intern is about to get wrecked. This is going to be good. Waiting for the CEO. Tiffany glanced at the screen, her face draining of color, but she still tried to argue with the void. Don't believe her, guys. She's just a good actress. Just wait until Mark gets here. He'll throw her out on the street. The sharp ding of an elevator sliced through the tension. The doors of the private executive elevator slid open, and all eyes turned. Mark burst out like a whirlwind. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie crooked, his forehead slick with sweat. He was breathing hard, as if he'd run a marathon, completely stripped of his usual polished confidence. His eyes darted wildly over the chaotic scene until they landed on Tiffany, standing there with wounded pride. He froze just for a second. Then his gaze met mine. I stood with my arms crossed, looking at him as one might regard a strange insect. Beside me stood David, his expression openly contemptuous. In that instant, Mark knew his reign was over. Seeing him, Tiffany clutched at him like a drowning woman grabbing driftwood. She rushed forward, shedding all pretense of pride, clinging to his arm and whining, "Honey, you're here. Look at her, this crazy woman and that loser David were bullying me," Tiffany cried. She threw coffee on me and threatened to fire me, call security, and throw me out. Mark stood frozen, his arm stiff in her grip. He stared at me, his lips moving as if trying to form words, but nothing came out. Fear was etched across his face. He knew better than anyone that the woman standing before him was not just his wife. She was the chairwoman, the one who held his career, his title as CEO, and every ounce of wealth he enjoyed firmly in her hands. "Mark," I prompted, my lips curling into a smile that made him visibly shudder. "What's the matter, CEO Thompson? Your beloved is crying for justice. Aren't you going to do something?" Sensing his hesitation, Tiffany shook his arm impatiently. "What's wrong with you? Say something. Everyone is watching. You have to show them who's in charge." Mark slowly turned to look at her. The affection in his eyes was gone, replaced by raw, unfiltered hatred. In that moment, he understood that this foolish, arrogant girl had just lit the fuse on the bomb that would destroy his career. Then it happened. Smack. The sharp, explosive sound echoed through the lobby. Mark swung his arm and struck Tiffany hard across the face. The force sent her stumbling backward, her heels slipping as she crashed onto the marble floor. Her phone flew from her hand, skidding across the tiles, its live stream still running. Tiffany clutched her cheek, where the red imprint of 5 fingers was already blooming. She stared up at Mark in disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The man who had sworn his love to her the night before, who had promised her a house and a car, had just struck her in front of hundreds of witnesses. "Shut your mouth!" Mark screamed, his voice cracking with panic and rage. What the hell are you talking about, calling yourself my wife? I don't know you. You're crazy. Stop spreading these lies. The lobby erupted in gasps. The reversal was brutal, shocking and utterly pathetic. Mark turned back to me. His aggression vanished instantly, replaced by a groveling, desperate expression. He clasped his hands together, his voice trembling. Katherine, honey, please let me explain. I honestly don't know who she is. She must be some obsessed fan or a delusional woman trying to get attention. Please, you have to believe me. You're my only wife. I watched his pitiful performance with a wave of nausea rising in my chest. This was a man who refused to take responsibility for his actions, who would discard his mistress without a second thought if it meant saving himself. On the floor, after a brief moment of stunned silence, Tiffany snapped. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation of being betrayed and abandoned in public. Realizing she had been used and thrown away like a broken toy, her fury surged to the surface. She shrieked, throwing all restraint to the wind. Mark Thompson, how dare you hit me? Tiffany screamed. You don't know me? Then who was in my bed at the Mandarin Oriental last night? Who signed the papers for the Hudson Yards condo in my name? You've been sleeping with me for months, and now that your rich wife is standing here, you pretend I don't exist? Her words hit Mark like a bucket of ice water. Every denial he had made instantly collapsed. The phone lying on the floor continued recording, capturing every accusation, every expression and broadcasting it live to the internet. Shut up. Shut up right now. Mark lunged toward Tiffany, desperate to silence her. But David was faster. He stepped in, gripping Mark by the shoulder and shoving him back with controlled force. Years of discipline and strength easily overpowered a man softened by indulgence and corruption. That's enough, David said coldly. Stop humiliating yourself. You're disgracing this institution. I walked toward Mark slowly. The sharp click of my heels against the marble floor echoed through the lobby like a judge's gavel. I stopped in front of him and met his eyes. There was no warmth left in my gaze. You said you don't know her? I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Then why does she have keycard access to your office? And why did her bank account receive a $2 million transfer from your secret offshore account last month? Mark's eyes widened in horror. He had never imagined I knew about that money, the funds he had embezzled from the new MRI procurement project. He had believed the shell companies had hidden it perfectly. What are you talking about? He stammered, still clinging to the lie. I don't know anything about that. At that moment, Arthur Vance stepped out of the crowd, a thick folder tucked under his arm. He came to my side, bowed his head respectfully, and handed it to me. Madam Chairwoman, he said, these are the complete bank statements, the condo purchase contract under Miss Tiffany Jones's name, and security footage from the Mandarin Oriental covering the past 3 months. All obtained legally. I took the file and dropped it at Mark's feet. The pages spilled across the floor, stark white against the marble, exposing the truth for everyone to see. Read it, I said coldly. Read it and see exactly what you've been doing behind my back. Mark stared at the scattered documents, his face drained of all color. He knew it was over. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees, trembling. He grabbed the hem of my pantsuit, his voice breaking as he begged. Katherine, honey. I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Please, for the sake of our 10 years of marriage, forgive me. Just this once. I swear I'll leave her. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave. Please, forgive me. The sight of the hospital's CEO on his knees, sobbing and pleading before his wife, sent another wave of shock rippling through the lobby. Oh my God, someone whispered. So she really is the chairwoman. The chairwoman went undercover. This is better than a movie. Serves him right. A cheating, embezzling piece of trash. Tiffany sat in a daze at the edge of the lobby, staring at the man who had once been her golden ticket to a life of luxury. Now he was groveling on the floor, stripped of all dignity. In that moment, she understood that her fantasy of becoming a CEO's wife had shattered beyond repair. Worse still, she was now facing legal consequences for accepting stolen money. I looked down at the man kneeling before me, not a trace of pity in my eyes. 10 years of marriage? I scoffed. When you were stealing money meant to save lives to buy your mistress a condo, did you think about our marriage? When you allowed her to insult me and harass my staff, did you think about our marriage then? I pulled my leg free from his grasp and turned to face the stunned crowd of employees. Raising my voice so everyone could hear, I made my declaration. I am Katherine Hayes, chairwoman of the board of Apex Medical Group. Effective immediately, Mr. Mark Thompson is terminated from his position as CEO for gross ethical violations and suspected felony embezzlement. Any decisions made by him from this moment forward are null and void. The words fell like a sledgehammer, crushing the last remnants of Mark Thompson's dignity. The lobby erupted into murmurs that quickly grew into open discussion. I saw triumph in the eyes of nurses and staff he had bullied for years. I saw relief on the faces of doctors who had remained honest despite the pressure. But Mark wasn't ready to surrender. Like a cornered rat, his survival instincts kicked in. He lifted his tear-streaked face, and behind the desperation, I saw that familiar, calculating glint. He struggled to his feet, brushing dust from his knees, trying to reclaim a shred of his former authority. Katherine, you can't do this to me. He shouted, his voice dripping with false victimhood. You can't accuse me of embezzlement based on unverified bank statements. That $2 million was an investment in the new hospital wing project. The paperwork just hasn't been finalized yet. You're misunderstanding everything. He turned to the crowd, raising his hands as if swearing an oath. Everyone, listen to me. I am CEO Mark Thompson. I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to this hospital. I would never do anything to harm it. This is a conspiracy blatant setup. I watched his clumsy performance in silence. An investment in a new wing? A pathetic excuse invented on the spot. Did he really think he could deceive me or the lobby blaming missing paperwork? I didn't need to respond. Someone else stepped forward, carrying a truth sharper than any accusation. An investment in the new wing? David's calm, steel-edged voice cut through the noise. He walked toward Mark, holding a tablet displaying real-time inventory data. He stopped directly in front of him, standing a full head taller, his presence utterly overwhelming, and raised the screen so everyone could see. Mr. Thompson, you claim the money was invested in a new hospital wing, David said calmly, but our asset management system tells a very different story. He lifted the tablet slightly so the crowd could see. 2 weeks ago, you personally approved the purchase of 10 top-of-the-line ventilators and a next-generation MRI system. You signed off on this order at the exact time the chairwoman was in Germany negotiating those same contracts. The total value of the deal was $2 million. How do you explain that? Mark began to sputter, sweat streaming down his face. The shipment is on its way. There were complications with customs. What would you know about international logistics? David's lips curved into a cold, contemptuous smile. With a quick swipe of his finger, a new document appeared on the screen. I may not be an expert in customs, he replied evenly, but I can read. This is a confirmation email from our German supplier, sent to me this morning. They confirm they never received a single dollar from Apex for this order. And naturally, no equipment has ever left their warehouse. A collective gasp rippled through the lobby. The evidence was irrefutable. David continued, his words precise and relentless, like a surgeon's blade cutting away diseased tissue. You claimed the equipment was already in transit, yet our warehouse is empty. You used the excuse of an urgent down payment, embezzled the funds, and funneled them into a shell company. Coincidentally, Miss Tiffany Jones was suddenly able to purchase a luxury condo for that exact amount. He looked directly at Mark. Did you really believe the chairwoman would never uncover this? Mark stumbled backward, his body shaking, his mouth opening and closing without sound. He had never imagined David would be this well informed. To him, David had always been a quiet, bookish surgeon, someone focused on operating rooms and research papers, not financial trails and shell companies. I looked at David with newfound admiration. While I had been abroad, he hadn't merely excelled in his medical duties, had been silently guarding my family's legacy. He had gathered every piece of evidence, patiently waiting for my return so we could finally cut the cancer out of our institution. David turned toward me, his expression unwavering. Madam Chairwoman, as head of cardiology and a member of the medical board, I can confirm that the absence of this equipment has already harmed patient care. Mr. Thompson's actions are not just embezzlement. They are a direct threat to human life. His voice hardened. This is an unforgivable crime. That final statement was the knockout blow. Mark collapsed to the floor, his eyes hollow, all resistance drained from him. The truth now lay exposed for everyone to see. The hospital lobby had transformed into a public courtroom. I knew it was time to restore order and to reclaim control. I stepped onto the small platform at the reception desk and gently took the microphone from a trembling receptionist. To all staff, patients, and guests present today, I began, my voice echoing through the vast space, what you have witnessed is a profound disgrace to Apex University Hospital. On behalf of the board, I said evenly, I offer my sincerest apologies to all of you for being subjected to such a disgraceful spectacle. I let my gaze sweep across the lobby, meeting the eyes of those waiting hoping for change. But we will not allow the corruption of one rotten individual to tarnish the tireless work of the hundreds of medical professionals who save lives here every single day. I paused, allowing the weight of my words to settle. To stabilize the situation and ensure that hospital operations continue without interruption, I am issuing the following executive decisions. The room went completely still. First. I pointed toward Mark, still collapsed on the floor. Mr. Mark Thompson is hereby terminated and stripped of all titles and responsibilities, effective immediately. Our legal department will cooperate fully with the district attorney's office to prosecute him for embezzlement and to conduct a thorough investigation into all of his prior activities. I turned slightly. Security, please escort this man off the premises. 2 uniformed guards moved in at once, pulling Mark to his feet. He offered no resistance. His head hung low as they led him through the crowd toward the exit, accompanied by whispers of contempt. The once charismatic CEO now looked like nothing more than a disgraced criminal. Second, I continued, my tone softening with measured respect, the position of CEO cannot remain vacant. This hospital requires a leader of integrity, competence, and compassion, someone capable of guiding us through this crisis. I turned and gestured toward David, a small smile forming. That leader is the man who stood up for truth and principle today. I faced the crowd. I am proud to appoint Dr. David Chen as Interim Chief Executive Officer of Apex University Hospital, effective immediately. A flicker of surprise crossed David's face, but he quickly regained his composure. He stepped onto the platform beside me and bowed his head respectfully. The response was immediate. Applause erupted first from the nurses and junior doctors, then spreading to department heads, staff, and even patients' families. The thunderous ovation filled the lobby. It was more than support for David, it was an endorsement of justice, accountability, and change. David met my eyes, gratitude and determination shining through. He took the microphone and spoke with calm conviction. Thank you for your trust. I promise to do everything in my power to build a healthcare system that is clean, transparent, and always puts patients first. As Mark was dragged away and David was being celebrated, one loose end remained. Tiffany. The once arrogant intern was huddled in a corner, her makeup smeared, her face streaked with tears. Seeing that the attention had shifted away from her, she tried to slip toward an exit. Arthur Vance noticed immediately. He gave a subtle signal to security, and they stepped in, blocking her path. Miss Jones, Arthur said politely, his voice cold enough to freeze the air, where exactly do you think you're going in such a hurry? We still haven't addressed the matter of the chairwoman's lawsuit, Arthur said calmly, nor the reputational damage you've inflicted on this hospital. Tiffany turned toward me in terror, her eyes brimming with desperation. Her fantasy of becoming a tycoon's wife had collapsed. Her only protector had been arrested. All that remained was a mountain of legal consequences. No, Madam Chairwoman, please forgive me, she sobbed, dropping to her knees on the cold marble floor. I know I was wrong. I was young and stupid. Mark manipulated me. Please don't fire me. Please don't sue me. I don't have any money to pay. I stepped down from the platform and walked toward her, looking at the trembling figure curled at my feet. I felt no triumph, only a quiet, aching pity for a life so thoroughly misguided. You say you were manipulated, I said evenly. Then tell me who threatened to have me thrown out of my own hospital? Who screamed at an elderly valet? Who live-streamed herself boasting about stolen wealth? I paused, letting each question sink in. Those were your choices. You were blinded by greed and intoxicated by a delusion of power that was never yours. I turned to my lawyer. Arthur, terminate Miss Jones's internship immediately for gross misconduct. Prepare a full report for the district attorney regarding her role as a recipient of embezzled funds. The condo was purchased with stolen money. She will be required to return every cent. At those words, Tiffany collapsed completely, her sobs breaking into raw, uncontrollable wails. She understood then that everything was gone: the luxury condo, the designer bags, the extravagant trips. All of it would be seized. She would be thrown back into reality, permanently marked by a stain she could never erase. David approached quietly. He didn't scold her. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he took a small business card from his pocket and gently placed it on the floor in front of her. This is the contact information for an excellent psychiatrist, he said calmly. I believe you need professional help for your personality disorder and your delusions of grandeur. I hope that after you've paid the price for your mistakes, you'll learn how to be a decent human being before trying to become a famous one. The gesture, though gentle, was devastating. It stripped away her last shred of pride. It made clear that she wasn't just a criminal but a deeply broken person. 2 security guards stepped forward, lifting Tiffany to her feet and escorting her out. Her cries faded behind the glass doors. The lobby slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The crowd dispersed. Doctors and nurses went back to their duties. The automated PA system chimed cheerfully, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. I leaned against the reception desk, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a deep, bone-weary fatigue. I had survived a long flight, a brutal emotional reckoning, and a public confrontation. I had won. And yet my heart felt hollow. What was victory worth when the man I had once loved was revealed to be a monster? The family I had fought so hard to protect was now, beyond doubt, shattered. David approached with a bottle of water already opened. He didn't say anything at first, just placed it in my hand and shifted slightly so his body shielded my face from the harsh sunlight pouring through the glass walls. Drink some water, Katherine, he said quietly. You did well today. Your father would be proud. I took a small sip. The coolness eased my parched throat and dulled the bitterness lodged in my chest. I looked up at him, my eyes burning. David. I'm exhausted. I thought I was strong enough, but this hurts more than I ever imagined. He met my gaze with deep compassion and rested a steady, reassuring hand on my shoulder. Of course it hurts, he said gently. You're human, not made of steel. But you were brave enough to face the truth and cut out the cancer. Now it's time to heal. I'll handle things here. Go home. I nodded faintly. I did need to go home, but not to rest. There was another battle waiting for me. The divorce. Arthur Vance approached, still holding the thick file. He understood immediately. Madam Chairwoman, he said, the divorce petition is already prepared. With the evidence of infidelity and embezzlement, the court will move quickly. Would you like to sign now? I inhaled deeply, gathering what resolve I had left. Give me the pen. I signed my name in one clean, unwavering stroke. That signature closed the door on 10 years of my life in the illusion of a happy marriage and opened an entirely new chapter. Begin the proceedings immediately, I said. Freeze all joint assets. I don't want him touching another cent. He leaves with nothing but the clothes on his back. Yes, Madam Chairwoman, Arthur replied, accepting the papers with solemn respect. I turned back to David and managed a small, tired smile. Thank you, David. I don't know what I would have done today without you. He smiled warmly, the expression softening his usually serious face. Don't disappear, he said. In his final days, your father saw Mark for what he was. It was too late then, but he made me promise I'd always look out for you. A man keeps his promises. I looked into his eyes and saw something I had ignored for years, not just loyalty, but a deep, steady affection. But this wasn't the moment for that. I needed time to heal, and he understood. I took hold of my suitcase and walked out of the hospital. The afternoon sun stretched my shadow across the pavement. I kept my head high as I left the wreckage of my past behind. Ahead lay a future filled with challenges but also with possibility. And for the first time in a long while, I knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. The calm that settled over the hospital after the storm was only the quiet before something far greater. I had barely arrived home and even collapsed onto my bed when my phone began vibrating nonstop. It wasn't a single call, it was a flood. My phone erupted with nonstop notifications, news alerts, social media tags, forwarded links. I unlocked the screen and was hit with a barrage of sensational headlines and viciously edited images spreading like wildfire. Healthcare heiress assaults young intern in jealous rage. The truth exposed, cheating wife and doctor lover frame CEO to seize hospital. Drama at apex, CEO overthrown in brutal coup by wife and her lover. Someone had downloaded Tiffany's live stream and professionally manipulated it. The footage of her screaming at the elderly valet, boasting about her husband's power, and humiliating staff had been cleanly removed. What remained were carefully selected clips, my expression cold and composed, David standing protectively at my side, Mark kneeling and begging in humiliation. The videos were paired with thousands of venomous comments far too coordinated to be organic. Look at that wife's icy face. She's pure evil. Poor husband. I bet she's abused him for years. Everyone knows she's been sleeping with that doctor forever. This was just an excuse to dump her husband. A shiver ran down my spine as I let the phone slip from my fingers. I had underestimated Mark's depravity. Unable to fight the truth, he had chosen scorched earth, weaponizing public opinion to destroy both my reputation and David's. If he couldn't survive, he would drag me into the mud with him and twist the narrative until I became the villain. The doorbell rang. Arthur arrived moments later, his expression grim, another file tucked under his arm. Madam Chairwoman, he said, the situation online is deteriorating rapidly. Our IT team traced the campaign to a black PR firm. They're using thousands of bot accounts to attack the hospital's official pages and your personal profiles. He paused, then added quietly, the funds were wired from an anonymous offshore account. I have little doubt it's the last of the money Mark managed to hide. I sank onto the sofa, pressing my fingers to my throbbing temples. What does he want? I asked. Does he honestly think this will get his job back? No, Arthur replied. He knows that's impossible. He's trying to pressure you into a more favorable divorce settlement. Or worse, wants revenge. Cornered people are dangerous. I took a slow sip of hot tea, forcing myself to steady my thoughts. I will not negotiate, I said flatly. Not a single cent. He chose to play dirty. I'll show him what it costs to provoke a woman who has nothing left to lose. Arthur nodded. What are your instructions? Should we disable comments and issue a statement? I shook my head. No. The more we hide, the guiltier we look. Let them talk. The truth doesn't fear noise. Gold is not afraid of fire. I met his eyes, my resolve crystal clear. Arrange a formal press conference for tomorrow morning. Invite everyone, the major networks, the city papers, and especially the online tabloids that are smearing me. If they want a story, I'll give them the truth on record. I will face them directly. Arthur nodded, admiration evident in his eyes. Understood. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Sleep was impossible that night. I drifted through the vast, echoing mansion, a house once filled with warmth now steeped in silence. I paused outside my children's rooms. My two little angels slept peacefully, unaware of the storm crashing around their mother. Watching them, I made a silent vow to be strong for them, for my father's legacy, and for myself. I would not break. The next morning, the main auditorium at Apex University Hospital was packed to capacity. Reporters filled every seat. Camera flashes erupted in relentless bursts, shutter clicks layering into a tense, suffocating hum. Everyone was hungry for the truth behind the billion-dollar scandal. I entered wearing a simple, conservative black dress, my makeup restrained, my expression composed and resolute. Beside me stood David, dressed in his familiar white coat, calm and dignified. The moment we appeared, every camera in the room swung toward us. We took our seats at the head table. I opened the press conference, my voice steady and clear. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. My name is Katherine Hayes. I have not called this conference to defend myself, but to defend the honor of Apex University Hospital and the dedicated professionals who serve within its walls. The material currently circulating on social media is a malicious fabrication deliberately edited to defame and slander. A young reporter stood, cutting through the air with a sharp question. Mrs. Hayes, the public believes you and Dr. Chun are having an affair, and that you dismissed your husband to clear the path for your lover. How do you respond? The room fell silent. Before I could speak, David reached for the microphone. He rose to his feet, met the reporter's gaze, then slowly scanned the room. I will answer that, he said, his deep voice resonating clearly. Regarding the relationship between Chairwoman Hayes and myself, I can confirm that we are longtime friends from medical school, trusted colleagues, and professional partners. There has never been an illicit affair, as these rumors suggest. He paused, taking a measured breath. But I will not conceal one truth, he continued. I have had feelings for Katherine for 15 years since our student days, throughout her marriage, and even now. It is a love rooted in respect and admiration. However, I have never crossed an ethical boundary as a physician, a colleague, or a friend. I kept those feelings to myself so that she could live the life she chose. His voice steadied, then hardened slightly. But today, watching her character attacked by a coward hiding behind lies, I refused to remain silent. The room was stunned. No one had expected such candor from a man so private, so disciplined. The murmurs faded, replaced by quiet respect and a growing sense of gravity. What had begun as scandal was shifting into something far more human and far more truthful. David continued, motioning to an assistant to project an image onto the massive screen behind us. A DNA laboratory report appeared, stark and undeniable. As for the real reason Mr. Thompson was dismissed, David said calmly, this is the evidence we chose not to release yesterday, hoping to grant him one final shred of dignity. He has since proven he does not deserve it. He paused, letting the room absorb his words. This is a DNA test confirming the paternity of Mr. Mark Thompson and a 3-year-old boy currently living at the Rosebud Children's Home. The auditorium erupted in shocked gasps. Every camera swiveled toward the screen. David continued, his voice steady and unyielding. Mr. Thompson fathered a child with another woman 4 years ago, long before he ever met the intern, Tiffany Jones. After the child's mother passed away from illness, he abandoned his own son at a children's home. He has never visited him, nor provided a single cent of support, despite living a life of extreme luxury. He looked out over the stunned crowd. A man who cheats on his wife, embezzles from his company, and abandons his own flesh and blood. Does such a man have any right to lecture others about morality or portray himself as a victim? The revelation landed like a knockout punch. Public opinion shifted instantly. All suspicion against me evaporated, replaced by a wave of seething anger directed at Mark. The image of the polished, dignified CEO shattered, replaced by that of a cold, heartless monster. I looked at David, overwhelmed. To protect me, he had exposed the deepest truth of his own heart. In silence, he had tracked down that innocent child and brought the truth to light, all to turn the tide in my favor. The press conference ended in a decisive victory for justice. The news coverage that followed was a complete reversal, praising my resolve and David's integrity while mercilessly condemning Mark's actions. After that day, Mark was utterly ostracized. He lost not only his position and reputation but was relentlessly attacked by the public. Friends who once flattered him refused to take his calls. The money he had hidden away quickly vanished, swallowed by PR firm fees and his own extravagant habits. Desperate and broke, Mark turned his thoughts to the lavish gifts he had showered on Tiffany, the luxury condo, the car, the designer jewelry. He convinced himself it was all his property and that reclaiming it was his only way to pay his debts and hire a lawyer. Drunk and enraged, he showed up at Tiffany's condo, the same one my lawyers had already placed a lien on but had not yet seized, and pounded on the door. When Tiffany opened it, there was no longing in her eyes, only pure contempt. She, too, was ruined, fired, broke, and publicly disgraced. "What are you doing here?" she sneered. "Come to leech off me? I'm about to be out on the street myself. Give me back the car keys and all the jewelry I gave you." Mark screamed as he stormed inside. "That was my money. You have to give it back." "My money?" Tiffany laughed bitterly. "That was the money you stole from the hospital. It's evidence now. Did you really think I was stupid enough to keep it and go to jail with you? I sold everything to pay my fines and legal fees." At her words, something in Mark finally snapped. He lunged at Tiffany, but this time, she fought back. She clawed at his face and sank her teeth into his arm, fighting like a cornered animal. "You pathetic loser," she screamed. "If you ever hit me again, I'll kill you." A vicious brawl erupted. The crash of breaking furniture and their shouts echoed through the hallway until neighbors finally called the police. When the NYPD arrived, they found a pitiful scene: Mark and Tiffany, clothes torn and faces bruised, grappling on a floor strewn with broken glass. Both were arrested for assault and disorderly conduct. The following day, photos flooded the internet: Mark in handcuffs, his face badly swollen, seated beside a disheveled Tiffany. The headline read, "A bitter end, disgraced CEO and mistress brawl over stolen fortune." Reading the news, I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet sadness for two lives destroyed by their own greed. A month later, the divorce proceedings began. Mark sat across from me in court with a state-appointed public defender. He looked 10 years older, his hair streaked with gray. The judge reviewed the overwhelming evidence against him. Mark pleaded guilty to every charge. He knew there was no hope left. When the judge awarded me sole custody of our children, Mark finally broke down and sobbed, perhaps the last trace of his humanity surfacing. As he was led away to face his criminal trial, he passed by me and whispered, "I'm sorry, Katherine." I did not respond. An apology now meant nothing. I turned and walked toward the sunlit doors of the courthouse. David was waiting outside, a warm, reassuring smile on his face. Above us, the New York sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, signaling a new beginning. In the aftermath, I devoted myself entirely to rebuilding Apex. With David by my side as CEO, we purged the corruption Mark had left behind and renewed the hospital's mission. Apex not only recovered, it flourished, becoming a symbol of medical excellence and integrity. Mark was eventually sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Tiffany, I later heard, ended up working at a rundown convenience store in a small Midwestern town, her dreams of fame and fortune reduced to the quiet beep of a cash register. 1 year after that fateful day, on a crisp autumn evening, David took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson River. When the meal ended, he slid a small, elegantly wrapped box across the table. Inside was not a diamond ring, but a beautifully detailed crystal model of a human heart. "Katherine," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of 16 years, "I'm a cardiologist. I've spent my life studying the heart, but the one heart I've never fully understood is yours. This crystal heart represents my feelings for you, transparent, unconditional, and constant. I know you've been hurt, and that your heart needs time to heal," he said gently. "Will you let me be your personal physician and care for that heart for the rest of your life?" Tears of happiness streamed down my face. I looked from the crystal heart in my hands to the man standing before me.The from medical school, the brilliant doctor, the man who had been my anchor through every storm. Yes, Dr. Chin, I whispered, smiling through my tears. I will. But you have to promise me this treatment plan lasts a lifetime. 5 years later, we stood side by side, cutting the ribbon for the new, state-of-the-art Katherine Hayes wing at Apex University Hospital. That afternoon, our family David, me, and my 2 children, who now lovingly called him Dad, walked together through the hospital gardens. The kids ran ahead of us, their laughter ringing through the air. As we passed a side gate, I saw him. A middle-aged man in shabby clothes stood across the street, his hair completely white, his face carved by years of hardship. It was Mark, released early for good behavior. He had nothing left, no family, no career, no home. He simply stood there, watching us with an expression of deep regret. David squeezed my hand. Do you want to talk to him? I watched Mark for a long moment, then slowly shook my head. The anger and hatred were long gone, replaced by a quiet sense of pity. The past was the past. Digging it up would only disturb the peace we had worked so hard to build. No, I said softly, turning back to my family with a smile. Let's go home. The kids are hungry. I took David's hand, and without looking back, we walked toward the warm glow of the setting sun. In that moment, I understood that the best revenge is not destroying your enemies, but building a life so full of happiness and light that their darkness can no longer reach you. And I, Katherine Hayes, had done just that.